Anyway, now the problems with that project are very important to think about. And one of the great problems, of course, was they became politically suffocating. And why they became suffocating is also, I think, important. I mean, many of the leaders of this movement, and the political forces that backed them, had to confront two things. And I say the first, which is more benign, and the second, which is less benign. The benign one is simple. The pact that this Gurwal project made with the people was that, look, we are confronting attack from imperialism. I mean, here, 1956, etc. India non-stop attempts at destabilization, including 1971, when the American 7th Fleet came charging up the Bay of Bengal. And I remember putting black paper on, windows because we were afraid they were going to bomb Calcutta during the Bangladesh War. And they threatened to bomb Calcutta. And it was a pretty wild feeling. So, they said, we are always under attack from imperialist forces, therefore, let us govern on your behalf. So we will govern on your behalf. We don't want to allow elements that can be, insinuated. That is, they can form a group and then the imperialist forces will insinuate. That was their argument. So let us govern on your behalf. Meanwhile, we will give you two things. One, we make sure your livelihoods are decently cared for. You won't live like, the Rockefellers, but you'll have a job, you'll have healthcare, you'll have bread prices will be secure, you'll have this, that, and the other. So your livelihood will be secure. Secondly, we try to provide meaningful culture for you. Now, when I have talked about this in India, I always get attacked by people because they say that's the stupidest thing because the culture the state provided was useless. And it's interesting to say that because I'll tell you, when television first begins in India in the 70s, more than half of the television programs were about agriculture. There were these long, boring shows about tractors and boring shows about like mustard and how to grow mustard. And there'd be somebody there in the field in Punjab telling you, this is when you know the mustard is this and there are 55 varieties. And I mean, you're sitting there as a urban kid thinking, what planet am I living on? But of course, in India, up to today, 80% of the population lives in rural areas. And farming is the lifeblood of the Indian population. So, we used to joke and say in Punjab, the only culture is agriculture. And to some extent, that's true. But agriculture is a cultural field of vision. The fields are for people where they spend most of their time. And a lot of the stuff of song and dance on TV was agricultural songs. There were people jumping around in folk, things. But when you go to the fields, that's what happens in festivals. I feel uncomfortable as they're just dressing up as a tourist. Not really. At weddings, people dress like that and they dance just like that for each other. So it's not all just a made-up thing. This is also part of our culture. So just because I'm in a city, I shouldn't reject my own culture because tourists like it. It's what people are also doing. So we don't have to embrace it. I love only that kind of dancing. I can like hip-hop and I can like Punjabi folk, Baisakhi dancing. That's fine, So it was not true that people argue as, what culture, it was all state propaganda. Well, for you and me it was dead boring. Because I wanted something more. I wanted, masterpiece theatre. Okay, English TV, lords and ladies drinking tea and things like that. Just because I had colonized brains. But somebody who lives in a rural area, this was actually educational as well and useful information. Alongside this went rural credit unions and things like that, which were all going to vanish by the 1980s, where the state is going to pull away from being an agricultural state and becoming an urban state, and therefore more appealing to people in cities than to the countryside. So that was the deal that they made. They said, we will take care of the politics, you'll get livelihood, and you'll get culture. By the 1970s, because of the nature of the debt crisis, economic collapse, I'm not going to get into the details, by that point, this game was over. So these states started to open up and they said, sorry, we can't guarantee you a livelihood anymore. sorry, I can't guarantee you culture because we now have to provide culture to the urban class. Because this rural stuff is too boring and we want to be modern. So to be modern, we need to have soap operas on TV and things like that. And set in urban areas, not in rural areas. So this shift meant that to the vast majority, the compact, the social contract of the Third World Project was broken. So now people were told, all you get is political suffocation. You won't even get a livelihood and you won't even get culture. But we are going to retain the first point, which is political suffocation. So that was the one way in which it goes. The second way in which political suffocation goes has also its roots earlier. This is the, as I said, the less benign version. The first is benign, it's a fact of history. The second is less benign. And this goes back to the theory of the one-party state, which comes actually interestingly from a socialist direction. So in Africa, it is a very commonplace thing to have the most sophisticated justifications from very enlightened people like Julius Nyerere about the need for a one-party state, questioning multi-party democracy. And I said it's less benign because I said, this is less about we are doing this because we're also giving you other things. It's only about political suffocation. But I want to say some things and I'd like you to think about it. We can talk about it for a minute. It is interesting that in many places, in India, there is a literature on this, where, in India there are elections, huge elections. There will be an election next month. 778 million people are eligible to vote. 53% of them will vote. That means maybe 400 million people will vote next month for parliament of whatever it is. 300 and some representatives. It's a big exercise. But interestingly, in India, it is certainly the case, and I know it's the case elsewhere in the South. A lot of people say, we would prefer not to elect our representative. It's interesting. And this is an interesting logic. So the logic goes like this. If we elect you, and you betray us, we're stuck with you for 4 years. If you're nominated by somebody, we can get rid of you tomorrow. Secondly, if we elect you, we're responsible for you. If you're nominated, they are responsible for you. So the reason I say this one-party thing is not so benign is that the logic is complicated. And political theorists of the South have started to try to make, the nativist argument, saying that democracy is not for us because we have this other way of doing things. Now, it may be the case that we have other opinions, actually more democratic maybe. That is to say, you don't want to be stuck with somebody, you want to right to recall, whatever. It's a good discussion to have. But it's insidious. It's a dangerous discussion to also have. If it's had in the context of one is democracy and the other is not, one can understand all to be an argument about democracy, how best to be represented. Because after all, I agree, why should elections be the sole mechanism? On the other hand, they have a useful way to gauge the population. And so, anyway, these are the kind of political outcomes. Finally, so the story I wrote went from 1928 up to the present. And the second book is about the present more, from the 70s onward. The reason I was interested in the present is that now backwardness has taken on a whole different meaning. With this huge machine called China producing everybody's toothpaste. So how do we deal with that? Because we certainly don't feel culturally dominated by China. So now China is producing the base and our superstructure is all messed up. We don't understand, what are we now? They make everything, and what is our culture? It's some kind of hybrid mishmash, we're not sure. So we are in a very fluid and bizarre place. And one thing is clear, that there is going to be, over time, in very close time, a retreat of American power. That is very clear. It's already happening. That retreat is going to take place. So what is this going to mean culturally? What are going to be the cultural effects of this retreat? Is it going to be that in countries like Egypt or India, where people are going to exert themselves to try to create new aesthetic horizons, to try to create new voices? Are we going to liberate ourselves, in other words, from the feeling that we need to read American literature because we use American toothpaste? Are we going to be able to create new aesthetic horizons? Is the confidence going to come regionally? And the last thing I'm going to say is, here the instructive example is South America, where, you cannot imagine, half my job is as a journalist, and in the 1990s I was covering South America. And even in the 1990s, it's amazing in South America how bad things look. It just looked like, this is like, the last town in a country which nobody wants to visit anymore. And there is no shops in this town, and people are living at the edge of civilization. They felt like that. That was the feeling. In Venezuela, the feeling was appalling. In 1989, there was an uprising in Caracas or Caracazo. The whole city went out of control for 3 or 4 days. Hundreds of people were killed by the security forces. In 1992, Hugo Chavez attempted a coup, it failed. And then he went to prison. But he was a cat. Because in the press conference going to prison, he said, everybody put down your emotions for now. For now. Put down your emotions for now. Everybody stop fighting. I take personal responsibility for the whole coup. For now, we must stop. He kept saying for now, for ahora, for ahora, for ahora. That becomes the slogan of the Bolivarian movement. For ahora. They returned at the end of the 90s. But I remember visiting Venezuela in 1985, and it was gloomy. Central University of Venezuela, the students were all like, oh God, we're back to Calera. He's 792 years old. Nothing, no possibility of any future. And then this thing appears in 1998 as an electoral force. You win an election. Major victory. And then in Venezuela, from 98 to the present, there's been an election almost every year. And the Americans have frequently tried to overthrow the government, including currently. So, they have created a continental aesthetic. They have created a literature which nobody knows about. You travel out there, they have prizes that they award each other. And they don't feel like our writers are only good when they win the Booker Prize, or when they win the Nobel Prize, or when they win some American award. They look to their authors, they review each other, they win their own prizes, they have created their own aesthetic space. And I think what I'm saying in this final point is not a nativist thing. I'm not saying that they say that our literature is better, because by the way, they have a huge translation industry. Because they want to read what's happening elsewhere. So they are not inward looking. But they don't look outside for, their, what's that word? Looking away for... Yeah, for their validation. They don't look elsewhere for validation. Because, they feel like they're human beings. So one of my favorite lines is from a sharing great 18th century Indian. He gave a great line, and this is my motto, and I'll leave you with it. He said, "Aadmi tha badi mushkil se insaan hua." We were people with great difficulty who became human. We are backward people. We need to become forward-looking human beings. Thank you.
Although his name means victory.
It means courage.
It means victoria. So, thank you very much for an interesting journey, and I'm really glad we have recorded it, because I'm sure a lot of others will be interested in listening to it. And now, let's ask the question.
My question is about...
What is your name?
I'm Mira Boitia. I work for our newspaper, I don't usually follow Egyptian model safety, but my question is inspired by the lecture, because the past 2 years we've been having that debate about sort of backwardness and forward thinking, and whether this is supposed to be the crux of the political war we've been having. So it became identity, debating about identity rather than revolution and its slogans. I don't know if you've been following that and what you make of it, and you relate to it, to the debate that is going on. Islam is to understand the backwardness and the secularists to necessarily have something more progressive for the Christians?
I mean, it's a complicated business, obviously. But you know, it's so on the surface of it. I was recently in a TV show about Libya, which I know much better than Egypt. And the presenter in the break said to me, "I'm going to ask you," and he kept needling me even before we began. He said, "I want to ask you about has the Arab Spring failed? Has the Arab Spring failed? And he said right before we went back, he said, "Has the Arab Spring failed?" Like, come on, please don't ask that. And then the question up was, "So has the Arab Spring failed?" And the answer is that it's a question of what you understand time to be and what you understand transformations to be. You know, if you just look at examples, the Mexican Revolution broke out in 1911. It was not consolidated till 1930, 34 maybe. You know, that's a 23-year period. It's a long time. In Russia, closer to the present, in 1917, the revolution breaks out. Maybe it breaks out in 1905, actually. You know, and then it consolidates maybe in the 50s. You know, there's World War II interrupting it. These things take time. Transformations don't happen immediately. The speed of technology, I think, has made us as a people, planet people, impatient. And I think the sense of so what is failure when we're not giving ourselves time? You know, so that's the first part. I think if there's no conversation about patience and the nature of transformation, I think you'll always fall into self-doubt, depression, guilt, you know. And the aesthetic at this moment should be confidence, not doubt. You know, obviously the politics are messy. Who said the politics are easy? I mean, again, it's the danger of a kind of thinking of us, them, we, people, thing, you know. There's no such thing as the people. And the people can be wrong. Look at Ukraine. The people can be deeply wrong. They can be racist, they can be Nazis. You know, there are people on the streets in India. This new party emerged called the Aam Aadmi Party, Ordinary Man's Party. Ordinary Man's Party is generally translated. And it's good, I'm going to tell you why that's a good reason, it's Ordinary Man's Party. There have been a series of attacks on women in Delhi. And so the Justice Minister of the Aam Aadmi Party decided to become a vigilante. So he with some party members went to a middle class neighborhood and there was an African house with some Africans living in it. And he accused them of prostitution. It's a racist, vigilante attack on this group of people living in Delhi. And he dragged the women out and sent them to hospital to be tested. So this is a popular movement. Populism is a dangerous thing sometimes. So what I'm saying is that I think if a vocabulary of transformation doesn't have within it a huge amount of space for patience, a huge amount of space for the complexity of politics, and therefore for the necessity of setbacks, it's going to end up demoralizing itself. And people should never feel demoralized. That's why I said earlier that you'll hear a lot of optimistic stuff from me, nonsensical, overly optimistic. Why? Because we just don't give up as people. You know, the water always finds the ocean. It hits a rock, it goes around it. You know? So what is it with our period now where we've trained ourselves to be so impatient, so in need of thinking of politics like a sports match, which has a beginning and can never end in a draw. Somebody has to win. You know, it's like a football game. Now we go to penalty. Now extra penalty time. I mean, just call it a draw. Stop it. These two teams are matched. Penalty is not like the 90 minutes you just played. It's real skill. You know? So why should there be a penalty time in politics? It comes like this. People build confidence. Because the language of defeat is a language of demoralization. You know, and people are much more complicated.